Hey guys, what's going on there? Sam Patrick here for the Journal of Special Operations Medicine's Discussions with Sam Patrick. Today we have another super awesome guest, and not just because I'm biased about the name, we got Master Sergeant retired Sam Rodriguez. Sammy, he's got pretty awesome military career of 29 years, all Army side. I joined originally back in 1979 when things were just a little bit different than they are today. Um, he went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection in 1988. Got successfully assessed, started the Special Forces Q course, and graduated in 1990 as an 18 Delta Special Forces medic. Upon graduation, he went over to 7th Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg, which is primarily responsible for the Southern Command area of influence inside the Army, where he served with honor for many years, and then did some time at Fort Bragg as an instructor at the Special Operations Medical Training Center, which is where most soft medics go to get trained. So he not only paid it forward through that, but also shaped and influenced many generations of soft medics there. And he finished up his Army career down at United States Army Special Operations Command as a senior enlisted medical advisor there. So doing some pretty, well, staff work ain't the best. It's very important to shape and influence the next generations. Sammy's still doing a lot of good work, shaping and influencing the military medical space. He was a lessons learned senior operations analyst at Free Use SOC. When he got out, he's working for the UNC THRIVE team, which we're going to talk about directly. And he's also heavily ingrained with the Special Operations Medical Association, where he's been serving as the historian for many years now. And we're going to have some awesome conversations looking back on what he's found in his journeys through history of the Special Operations Medical realm or organization or enterprise, I should say. If you haven't caught our first episode with Dr. Frank Butler, please go ahead and do that. That was awesome. Dr. Butler, again, was one of the founding fathers of tactical combat casualty care. And I'm really excited to talk to Sammy because we're going to kind of look back at the past 30 years of TC3 through his lens of experience, since he was definitely there way before tactical combat casualty care was even an idea, and it was just the field dressing being carried on your load-bearing equipment on that shoulder pocket. So I really look forward to this conversation. I hope you do too, and please pay attention for new episodes rolling. And if you're not going out to the Special Operations Medical Scientific Assembly down in North Carolina, well, I'm missing you guys too. But for everybody down there, I hope you have fun. Please continue to carry the torch, and we'll talk to you guys later and hopefully see you next year. All right, hope you enjoyed the episode, and without further ado, here's Master Sergeant retired Sammy Rodriguez. All right, guys, here we are. As promised, Master Sergeant retired Sam Rodriguez. We have him on the line right here. And so, Sammy, welcome to the second episode of the JSOM Discussions with Sam Patrick podcast. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day and doing this.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, and always appreciated the mission of the JSOM.
Yeah, no, it's a super relevant journal for, I think, the big one too, as SOMA's rolling in, and we're trying to get this episode up before SOMA or right with the launch of SOMA. Is the fact that, hey, both that conference and the journal was created for the South Medic as a vehicle for to give us a voice, give us pertinent data, and also just kind of be a relevant conduit for stuff for us when we're out there in the woods, not sure what we should be doing. But so our first episode, there it is right there. Is that the original one?
That's the very first
First edition. Look at
first
that.
edition
Nice.
that I have of the JSOM, and have always enjoyed reading the articles and keeping up with some of the things that have been happening around the community.
No, it's good, and especially with the scientific assembly being a vehicle as well. Um, but yeah, so our first episode, we talked with Dr. Frank Butler. Obviously, we all know who he is. For those who are not familiar, Dr. Frank Butler was one of the founding creators of the concept of tactical combat casualty care. And Sammy, you joined the Army in 1979, right?
Correct.
So,
1979. I started out as a 19 Delta Cav Scout
okay.
and had a break in service, and then came back in as a 13 Fox Forward Observer.
Okay, that's
Um,
funny. I got my start in the Cav. I was a line medic, so I'm very familiar with the 19 Delta community. May they rest in peace, since I don't think it's an MOS anymore. Um, but yeah, so you were there back in the day when field medicine was a little bit different, wasn't it?
yeah, it wasn't as tied to we still studied trauma and had trauma as far as classes, but it was more of operational medicine in the form of preventive medicine, deployment medicine, those kind of things. But then after Mogadishu,
Right.
a lot changed, and that was the evolution into more of the TC3 realm and talking about how we could better prepare for those type of events.
Right. So you were in seventh group in 1993, right after Gothic Serpent went down, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
so
And we actually linked up with Rob Miller
yep.
soon after that to be able to bring some of the practices to I mean, within the special forces, we always had a lot of trauma that we would teach our trauma classes that we would teach our team members. They always hated it, especially doing IV training,
Right.
but we usually did some pretty in-depth, but we started to incorporate some more of the TC3 type of modalities to be able to be a little bit more prepared.
Right. So that 93 timeline, like, because the white paper published by Doc Butler and et al. Um, was 1996, if I remember correctly. So in 93, you're taking the direct lessons learned from the 75th Ranger Regiment and obviously special or Delta, from what they learned in blood downrange. Uh, can you talk about kind of how that process went and how like it was adopted down at the ODA level before the overarching concept of TC3 was a concept?
Well, going through the SF medic course, it was heavy on trauma as well, and being able to provide those kind of that type of training for deployment, seeing that we were a small element, everybody had to learn, the basics like the back of their hand, just like we had to learn as medics, how to do commo, how to do explosives, and so um, we were systematically able to divide up our time so that our team sergeant would design our training schedules so that we would be able to facilitate the type of training that we needed to execute when we went downrange.
Right.
And I mean, a lot of it had to do with the trauma one, the trauma two, and the trauma three that we learned while we went through the Special Forces medic course
Right.
to integrate those things.
So I'm going to get back to the actual the Q course, the Delta pipeline, a little bit here. But since you were conventional Army as a combat arms guy back in the 70s and 80s, you were able to kind of see like how what was the emphasis by for you as a traditional combat arms soldier? Was there much emphasis placed on medical training back in the 80s?
Hardly none. It was more the skill levels that you had to go ahead and test for back in those days. We used to have the SQT, which was an annual test that, as for your MOS, you had to do the basic skills, and then you had to do military occupational specialty training tests that you would do annually. And I mean, it was no more than sticks and rags
Right.
for the most part.
And there still had a pretty heavy emphasis on yelling medic as the person's bleeding out on the ground.
Correct.
Right.
That's for sure.
I think that's probably one of for me since I've done a lot of work in the law enforcement community. I've recognized that the trauma patient is not the medic's problem initially. Like I think that's the biggest takeaway. The most valuable part of tactical combat casualty care, in my opinion, has been getting all service members to understand that you're the most critical chain or like the link in the chain of survival. Like the medic can't get there in time if someone does have a true massive bleed. So that's one of my observations from the 20 years of doing this. Um, as we talk about the particularly the special forces medic, so you went through the Q course in the 90s. You went back to being an instructor mid 90s, late 90s. To today, and since you're in that orbit and probably went to the refresher course multiple times, how have you seen the evolution of trauma medicine in the special operations world?
Well, a lot of it was more hospital based. It was the utilizing the what was it called? The trauma classes that we used to have all the time that were doctor led,
Hmm.
and it was more or less, that you already had the patient at a treatment facility, and you had a ton of tools to be able to use um, within that training scenario. Um, to before, I mean, till after we started using, mannequins out in the field and with minimal amount of um, equipment.
Hmm.
And initially it was where the operators would address some of the wounds prior to getting to the medic and utilizing that more systematically, which enhanced, survivability
Right.
for the casualties out in the field. I mean, we used to do it in the training before, but then as an instructor, we tried to reinforce that when they came through that hey, you're not going to have a hospital worth of equipment to be able to utilize. So you have to, as we say, improvise, adapt, and overcome,
Hmm.
um, and use those tools to be able to. And it was interesting the different tools that the medics came up with to be able to provide that, which eventually turned into some of the tourniquets that
Right.
were accepted throughout the military.
Yeah, that's cool. That's through yeah, born out of necessity, really, and simple solutions for wicked problems. It's kind
Mhm.
of cool to see some of the creativity. Actually, I'll give shout outs to a lot of the patrol officers I worked with. Like they would ask a question, I'm like, I don't know, let's try it and see if it works. And that like some
Yeah.
of the alternate techniques that I've come up with are born straight from somebody who has no medical background, saying, "Hey, have you thought about this?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." Uh, so you finished your career up at the surgeon cell for you're the senior enlisted medical advisor for USASOC Army Special Operations Command. Uh, One of the things that we see with the Walker dip and as we scale back from the global war on terror is how do we keep commanders engaged with hey, TC3 is important and we need to make sure your entire formation is still focusing on it.
I think it's actually bringing the commanders out to the training and making sure that they see the value and making it I mean one of the things that we talked about while I was serving at USASOC surgeon's office was essentially keeping the foot on the accelerator, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we were getting out there and advocating for the medics, the battalion medics, the group medics, the regiment medics, and making sure that they know that what we do as far as training didn't necessarily have to be it needed to be in the operations.
Right.
It needed to be in the three. It didn't need to be, as a training thing that you check off, but it needed to be in the operations. It needed to be integrated over the years. And we saw that a lot of the commanders, they get it.
Mm-hmm.
They understood that, especially those that had been involved in mass casualty events, over the 20-year war, to be able to integrate those things. And there's some avid champions that really wanted to keep it integrated.
Nice. Yeah. And then I'm sure when you're doing your lessons learned work, what
Mhm.
were you focusing on a specific channel of lessons learned, or was it all encompassing?
Well, initially I started out on the medical side, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a matter of developing products that would enhance. And I worked with Doc Butler on some of the
Mm-hmm.
things that he had put together from the TC3 committee and some of the lessons learned that Fort Riley, which was the home of lessons learned throughout the Army,
Right.
um, and help them put some literature together so that it would not only resonate with the special operations community, but also with the conventional military as well.
Right.
A couple of books that was done. The ST manual is not necessarily, a formal commercial book.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've noticed is I would volunteer or not volunteer. I routinely would stick my nose in places that didn't really belong. I got roped into a prolonged field care exercise with 7th ID up here at JBLM, which was actually championed by an Australian exchange officer, ironically. And it kind of opened up my aperture to all right, SOF, special operations medicine, is very good at making sure that everybody understands it's important. But the troop commander, it was Cav guys. The troop commander was like, "Hey, can we cancel this inject so I can go back to war fighting?" When we dumped 12 casualties on him, and it made me realize, like, hey, we still have a little bit of a way to go on the conventional side. So since you were integrating with Fort Riley at the Centers for Army Lessons Learned, how like did you notice this? Like, did you observe the same thing? Like that stuff would go into call, they would obviously write the papers, but then it would not land anywhere.
Well, they wanted to be part of the, especially the special operations community, because they knew that there'd been some hard lessons within our community over the years, and they didn't want that same thing to happen with them in terms of some of their conventional forces. So um, they actually took part in some of the phone calls that Captain Butler championed in terms of TC3. It really perpetuated throughout the military community as far as not just in the Navy but in the Army
Mm-hmm.
and the Air Force because they didn't want to get caught unprepared for the next Mogadishu.
Right. Yeah, and then I know there's everybody's looking at Ukraine and obviously the current activities going on with Iran and the constant preparation for the littoral combat and Indo-PACOM. It kind of seems hard to focus on one specific, like how do we prepare for a theater. That being said, how I'm not going to ask for arbitrary numbers, but like so for casualty operations, how much of it is operations and how much is it clinical in your opinion?
For a mass cow,
Just
or
basically casualty response, like so any sort of casualty response scenario. So we have a casualty in theater. Obviously, like we're expected to do certain amounts of treatment, but also there's a heavy dose of operational requirements that have to go on to make sure that casualty gets moved.
yeah, it's been up at midnight with a bunch of those in the past in terms of individual and ex AOR and um, was a training accident, had to get the individual out. Um, Initially, in terms of you know not having any military transportation in those countries, having to fashion together the local resources that you have available to be able to get them from point of injury to the hospital, but the real work comes before you even go into country because you have to kind of figure out what assets are in different locations, and that takes a huge amount of preparation. But that's one thing that we were taught to do
Right.
was to figure out what level hospital was the nearest, so that you're not wasting time, taking them to some small hospital that can't support a trauma
Mm-hmm.
patient. And so there is a lot of preparation that goes into it, and but once you have to execute it and you see that all the work that you've done to prepare for it, getting them to the nearest, the best resources that are available, you sit back afterwards and you're like, wow, that's what we were trained to do. That's how we were trained to operate, and it works.
Yeah.
If you do your homework, figure out what's going on. Always stay in touch with the embassy, and make sure that they're, um, you know, they know you're on the ground there, so that they can flux, assets to wherever it is they need.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one. That's planning assumptions. I've seen way too many planning assumptions happen that have resulted in catastrophe. And like, yeah, if it kind of blew my mind when I was in that a single E5 medic created a theater wide medical plan that then got executed. And
Hmm.
then since he did his due diligence to like prepare everybody, like when the ambassador came storming down, it's like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, here, sir, this was your defense attaché had this whole time. Like this was a briefed plan. He was like, all right, cool. And it's cool to see that, and also that was a very relevant lesson learned in my career to recognize like never assume that someone else has done the plan for you.
Yeah, matter of fact, along those lines, before the air war of in Iraq, not Iran, Iraq, um, um, there was uh, I had been working at Walter Reed
Mm-hmm.
Medical Center as kind of an LNO because one of our guys from Seventh Group had gotten evac, out of Afghanistan, and was there at Walter Reed. I was there with the family for a while, and then as I was there, I went in around and started seeing that there was other special operations patients that were there, but the commands didn't know, because they had, been brought out of theater by the medical transportation. They knew that they were someplace in the medical system, so I started sending back reports on these other folks as well. Turns out that before the air war, I was asked to go and go to Landstuhl,
Mm-hmm.
Germany, and then travel forward to make sure that um, the medical folks knew what kind of assets were available, how to get hold of the actual people that were working there. Instead of just having a phone number, they had a name and a phone number to be able to, to call. And then a, a day after the air war started, I had gotten out and was back in Landstuhl, that but it was probably a 4 or 5 month period that I was traveling around making sure that folks in theater knew, who to call. And so that was a kind of planning preparation type
Right.
of thing that worked out really well.
So you were the Care Coalition before the Care Coalition was cool.
That's correct.
I love it. So you're currently serving as the Special Operations Medical Association historian. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'm not
Okay.
that I don't feel that old, but yes,
Yeah,
I am.
you don't have to be old to be a historian. You just have to be able to read books, I guess, and not just put it
Yeah.
into Chat GPT and say, hey, give me something. So I know we're starting to run out of time here, and I do want to get to
Sure.
Thrive, but like in that position of the historian, what are a couple of the cool things you've come across that you're like, hey, I would like other people to know about this because it's pretty neat.
Well, the formal start of the organization was in 1993 when it was actually formalized, but there were some things that happened before that that kind of set it up. But essentially, the program was designed to help special forces medics and special operations medical folks to be that were in the units to be able to get annual updates and get CMEs so that they wouldn't rust, if you will,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they would stay current with the different policies and procedures that were happening. And it just kind of it morphed into one year after the other being able to provide those kind of services. Now it's or I should say back then, there was Gothic Serpent to talk about, and that was in '96 and '97 at Soma when myself, a young, E6, went to the conference and learned about all these other resources that were available. And of course, the vendors, you had to forward them off. But what the vendors liked was that we're telling them the type of things that we needed in the field.
Right.
So they would try to come back the next year and try to help, fill that gap, which was great. But all in all, the one of the big parts about it is that we got together as a family.
Hmm.
We got together as a family. We got together as as brothers and sisters, not only to share our different experiences, but to to also, find out the latest and greatest
Yeah.
so that we could take it back to our units and make sure they knew exactly what was happening. And then the bottom line is that remembering our fallen and celebrating those was I guess one of the highlights, that we remember the ones that gave their all.
Yeah, no, and that's huge. There's stories behind all those, and as Mike Hetzler will say, it's the medical mafia runs deep, and it's always fun to get. I'm not gonna make some of this year, but it is like it's a family. Like you'll see people you haven't seen in 20 years, and you're right back to where you were that one night and wherever. Um, so you're
Yeah, the other
currently,
thing is
yeah,
that you run into them downrange,
yes, yeah,
after you
100%.
see them, and then they know who you are and you
Yep.
know who they are, which is great as well.
Yeah, it's all that you do unconventional warfare, building rapport
Mhm.
internationally. So,
Yeah,
so before we close out, we got a couple minutes left here. Do you want to talk about the Thrive program you're doing up there at UNC?
sure thing. I've been blessed to be the Veteran Outreach and Program Coordinator for the UNC THRIVE Program, which is a nonprofit community outreach program that helps veterans and first responders with mild to moderate TBI and PTSD. Because of a gift that's been given to the university, um, meals, lodging, travel, and the medical care that's received is covered for veterans and first responders. We also see some active duty that are transitioning out of the military. If they're within 12 months or so, we'll go ahead and see them. Big thing with that is that we can't necessarily cover all the cost for them because they're still on active duty,
Mhm.
but the major pieces of it are covered, so they can get evaluated before they get out. And we offer a 3-day evaluation and a 3-week intensive outpatient program with a year follow-up.
Oh, cool.
And essentially, they'll see anywhere from 12 to 15 clinicians within a 3-day period and get a summary to take back to their primary care provider and say, hey, you don't have to make all these appointments. I've seen these folks and this is what they found.
Right,
And we've found a lot of guys and gals that come to our program that after they get done with the 3-day, they go, you know what? I'm not doing so bad.
right,
And that's a revelation and a peace of mind, that they can take with them. But we see it doesn't matter if it's service related. And they have an other than honorable discharge, we'll see them as well,
cool.
because a lot of times that's the reason why the TBI or the PTSD is the reason why they were given that status.
Yeah,
So we see all eras of service, not just 9/11. We see Vietnam veterans, and some of the first folks that we saw was a Korean veteran
oh, cool,
in the program.
nice.
Yeah,
Well, I'll definitely get you the information for that, and we'll throw it up on the announcement for this the podcast or the description for you guys if you want to get more information about the Thrive program at the University of North Carolina. It sounds like it's very similar to Home Base and Palo Alto and all many of the other ones that are out there, but there's no such thing as too many services when it comes to trying to. As we all know, the burden of TBI and PTS it's oftentimes unseen scars that torment us. But no, I definitely thank you for sharing that. I will my work with the Honor Foundation. I'll definitely keep using that as a resource as well to push it forward. Um, you got any final shots before we sign off here?
well, I truly appreciate the Honor Society and yourself, Patrick, to Sam, I should say,
Yeah,
for hosting the podcast. And yeah, just everybody take care of each other, you know. If you don't come to our program, you know, find another program to reach out to, because there's nothing worse that with all these resources that we have, and somebody, does something and they didn't know. And
Right.
so be sure to share that information, and be well.
All right. Well, thanks again, Sammy Rodriguez. Appreciate you. For everybody going to Soma, be safe out there. Have fun. Make sure you keep paying it forward for the next generation, because the next conflict looks a little. It's going to be a little spicy. So, all right, Sammy. Thanks again, man. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you around.
Absolutely. Take care.